Namaste and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and to our Sunday service. I'll begin with the chant. Om Yathagnir Dahika Shakti Ramakrishne Sthita Hiya Sarva Vidya Swarupam Tam Sharadam Pranamamyaham. We salute Sarada Devi, who was established in Sri Ramakrishna as the burning power is one with fire, and who is the embodiment of all knowledge and wisdom. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So the topic this morning is the mother of all, mother is all. And so this is a topic, of course, in honor of Mother's Day. So first, let me wish all good wishes to all of those of you who are mothers in fact or mothers in heart. It's a special day, of course, for honoring the mother, and one which is international. Not all countries observe Mother's Day today. Some observe it on International Women's Day. In England, it's celebrated on what they call Mothering Day, though Mothering Day had nothing to do with the mother. It had to do with the Mother Church, a celebration of Mother Church. But it has become Mother's Day in England or in the British Isles. And Mother's Day is celebrated today. I don't know how much is celebrated because in the monasteries we don't celebrate it in India, but it is officially Mother's Day in India today also. So Mother's Day, let me say just a few words about Mother's Day itself, and then I'll get into the deeper topic. Mother's Day was first celebrated in America in 1908 in West Virginia by a woman named Anne Jarvis. And she was celebrating the death day of her own mother. Not that she had died that day, but it was the anniversary of her own mother's death. Her mother was also named Anne Jarvis, or Anne Reeves Jarvis. And her mother had served in the Civil War, nursing soldiers on both sides, the North and the South. And in honor of her, Anne Jarvis, her daughter, began the Mother's Day celebration in 1908 and lobbied for its becoming a national holiday. And at first, Congress, which at that time had not even given women the vote, they just laughed at the idea of having a Mother's Day. But in 1914, President Woodrow Wilson, he declared it a national holiday. And so since that day, in 1914, the second Sunday in May has been declared a national day for honoring the mother. Another interesting fact about Anne Jarvis is that she insisted on it being mother apostrophe S. That is the singular, not mother's apostrophe, plural, but mother singular possessive, Mother's Day, because she wanted it not to be sort of a generalized celebration of the fact of people being mothers, but she wanted it a celebration for one's own mother. And that was a beautiful idea. She herself, in later years, protested the fact that it quickly became commercialized. Hallmark took it up very quickly and started putting out Mother's Day cards, which we still have. But Anne Jarvis said, no, this is a day when people should write a letter to their mother, a letter expressing their love and affection and appreciation for all of the many sacrifices that a mother makes for her child and children. And it shouldn't be something that you just go to the store, buy a card, and give it to your mother. It should be something more personal than that. In fact, she protested the commercialization of Mother's Day so much that once she was arrested for her protesting under the charge of disturbance of the peace. So anyway, that is the origin of Mother's Day as a day of recognition of the mother. And of course, later there had to be a Father's Day, and then a Grandparents' Day, and a Siblings' Day, and on it goes. But as I've often said, I've said here on such occasions, in fact, last Mother's Day, and I've said it many times in other centers where I have lived, that one of the things that we, the Vedanta societies, can begin to do in our small way, we don't have much national influence, but someday we will. We can return the idea of the sacred and the sanctity of holidays and make them once again holy days. The days which have been observed in a purely secular way. Not that the recognition of one's own mother is a secular holiday. No, that itself is sacred. And it should be directed to one's own mother. But the sanctity of the idea of motherhood and all that motherhood represents, that's what should be a part of the day as well. So days like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving, the 4th of July, all of these should once again, they should be celebrations. That's one of the wonderful things in Hinduism, is that there's nothing somber in Hinduism. In Hinduism, the act of celebration, the act of joyous celebration is united with religion. That doesn't make it secular, that it's a recognition that religion itself should be a celebration. Religion itself should be joyous. It should be full of beauty, flowers, colors, food, giving and serving, etc. And so that let us bring back the sanctity of the occasions in our celebrations. And again, not enough, because it's very important to stress this in Western countries where religion was seen as such a somber affair. Only Christmas became a joyous occasion, and Easter to some extent, but Christmas even more so. Well, you can say Christmas and Easter both. But even that was criticized by many religious people as sinful, being too happy on spiritual occasions. And so no, that we should be happy. Swami Vivekananda said that sometimes I am, people sometimes criticize me for joking too much. But I am sad sometimes, but only when I have a stomachache. But otherwise, religion, he said, should be a joyous occasion. So, coming to motherhood, and then I'm going to come to a representative of motherhood, that is the Holy Mother, Sri Sarada Devi. But first, motherhood itself. So the mother, of course, is normally, yes, there are exceptions, but normally, naturally, the mother is the closest person to the child. It's always struck me quite strongly, emotionally, that when you read stories about the battlefield, in a battle, in an actual war, the battles of war, when a soldier is hit and is dying, it's often heard that the soldier cries out for their mother. And so that bond between child and mother is a sacred bond and recognized as a sacred bond. It should be recognized as a sacred bond. One which is fundamental because the father also plays a very important role in the life of a child. A child ideally needs both a mother and a father. It doesn't always have both, sometimes just one or the other. But ideally, a child needs both because the mother plays one function, the father plays another function. And a time comes when the father has a very important role to play in the child's life. But from the beginning, the mother is the source of the greatest love, the source of nourishment, the source of care, the source of attention. And therefore, in the Hindu tradition, the mother is recognized as the first guru. You may take a guru later in life, a spiritual guru, but your first guru is your own mother. And so the mother should be respected and loved. Again, not respected in a somber way, but respected and loved as one's first spiritual teacher. I remember still when I was a brahmachari living in India, and Swami Saradeshananda, Gopesh Maharaj, a great Swami who was highly regarded for his spirituality and his wisdom. He was a disciple of Holy Mother who closely associated with Mother, one of her sevaks, one of her attendants. He asked me and other brahmacharis, there were four of us Western brahmacharis, five, I keep counting more, five of us Western brahmacharis in training center at that time when he had come from Vrindavan to Belramat to stay for a few months. So he asked us one day, did your mother teach you your first prayer? And he said that is very important. If the mother teaches you your first prayer, that's a wonderful gift of the mother, because again, she is the first guru. And so, yes, I was fortunate that my mother gave me my first religious instruction. And so mother is the first guru. And of course, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, there's a famous statement which comes in the teachings of a guru to his disciples who have finished their 12-year course with the guru. It used to be in the Vedic age, where disciples would go and live with the guru for 12 years. And at the end of 12 years, there would be a valedictory ceremony. So in the valedictory ceremony, this guru in the Taittiriya Upanishad is giving his address as the students are finishing their life with him and ready to enter into the next stage of life, the stage of a householder. So he says, Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, etc. Atiti Devo Bhava. Let your mother be a god to you. Let your father be a god to you. Let your teacher be a god to you. Let the guest be a god to you. And so that idea sounds strange at first to the Western mind, because again, in the Western mind, where we're brought up with a monotheistic tradition where God is there and we are here and nobody but God is to be worshipped, and God alone is God. Everybody else is not God. So identifying somebody or something with God is a heresy. So to say that your mother is God, your father should be God to you, the guest should be God to you, the teacher should be God to you, that sounds like heresy to the ordinary Western mind. But no, that's quite natural. A child thinks naturally that its parents are gods. That's the most natural thing for a child to think. Not in theological terms. It's not that you ask, who is your mother and father? And they say, my mother and father are both gods. No, they don't say that. They're not thinking in theological terms. They don't state it that way. But in actual fact, they do feel that way, because the parents are these gigantic figures, loving figures, yes. In a healthy family, loving figures, yes, but these gigantic figures who are all-knowing and all-powerful. I experienced in my own life, and many people I know experienced in their life too, that whatever your mother and father told you when you were young, that was the truth. There was no doubt about it. I had many arguments with friends in the neighborhood, even when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. Even when I went to Sweden when I was 17 years old, where something that my parents did, the way that they did things, I thought that that's the way you're supposed to do it. So if a friend said, no, it's this other way, I said, no, it's this way. Why? Because my parents told me this is the way it is. So that is not something that's unusual or extraordinary psychologically. It's natural for a child to think that his parents are gods. And of course, because the topic of child abuse and so forth is so prevalent in the public mind nowadays, it should be mentioned also, so that people don't get the wrong idea, that puts a tremendous responsibility on parents also to be worthy of that respect. But in a healthy family, Again, the idea of the ideal father, the ideal mother, that's an ideal. That doesn't happen. Everybody makes mistakes. So this presenting an ideal is not to put a guilt trip on people for not being the perfect parents, which doesn't happen. But ordinary parents, ordinary loving parents, it is natural for the child to think of them as God. So the motherhood is a sacred relationship just by the very fact that we come from the very body of the mother. And the mother is the first guru, the first teacher. And it's an ideal. Motherhood is an ideal of love in the field of love. The most human love is combined with selfishness. We want something out of the other person. But the ideal of motherhood is the all-accepting, all-suffering, non-judgmental love. So yes, again, that's an ideal. It doesn't mean that actual mothers live up to that fully. But it's an ideal which in the calculus of life we approach closer and closer to by holding it as an ideal. If we don't have ideals in life, then we're lost. We have nothing to strive for, nothing to try to measure up to, nothing to try to grow towards. And so this ideal of the all-suffering, all-accepting, all-forgiving motherly love is considered the highest ideal of love. Yes, the love between husband and wife, that's a more intense love, certainly. But the love between the mother and the child is considered the ideal love, and especially the love of the mother for the child is the ideal love. And it's that ideal love which is the Divine Mother. So that ideal love is found in its fullness, in its completion, in the Divine Mother. We want to say in the idea of the Divine Mother. Well, yes, it's found in the idea of the Divine Mother. Why? Because it's found in the Divine Mother herself. That is who the Divine Mother herself is that all-accepting, all-suffering, all-enduring, all-forgiving love. That is the love of the Divine Mother, who is the foundation and the source of the universe itself, that in which the universe exists, that from which the universe comes, that in which it exists now, and that to which it returns. That is the Divine Mother. So it's considered that the ideal of God as mother is higher than the ideal of God as father. Both are good, and some people naturally want an ideal father, that is God as father. They're attracted to the ideal of God as father, and that's good. So if one has that, then go with that. That's wonderful. For you, that's the highest. But looking at ideals as ideals, comparing ideals as ideals, the ideal of God as mother is considered the highest because of the intensity of the relationship, the closeness of the relationship, the fact that you come out of the very body of the mother, and therefore there's that sense of not really being separate from the mother. So we find that the ideal of God as mother, that was rejected by the Abrahamic traditions. Why do we not find it there? Yeah, first I should say that, yes, it came back in certain forms in the Abrahamic traditions, but in general it was rejected theologically. Why? Because in the monotheism, many Hindus try to present Hinduism as monotheistic. No, Hinduism is not monotheistic. Hinduism is monistic, but not monotheistic. There's a difference. In monotheism, the idea is that God is one and God is unique, and that creation is not God. This is not God. This is matter. This is insentient. That God alone is holy. God alone is pure. God alone is righteous. Everything else is separate from God, but dependent upon God. And so if you see the universe as coming out of the very being of the Divine Mother, how can you separate this from God? You can't separate this from God. Just as I can't separate this from my own physical mother. I can't separate this from the being of God. So in monotheistic religions, there was the insistence that this is not God. God is, and God is everywhere. God is everywhere in here, but is everywhere but separate. And so the idea of the motherhood of God was denied. Again, human beings are human beings, and so it came back in different ways. It came back, for instance, in Christianity in the form of Mary. But even there, it was always insisted that Mary is not God, nor is she a God. She's a human being separate from God, but the purest of human beings and the closest to God, but not God, not like her son Jesus. And so Mary was never given, yes, in people's hearts, she was as good as God, better than God, loved by many more than even Jesus. But theologically, she was never allowed to become God. And in Islam, some of the names of God, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the beginning of the Quran, in the name of the most compassionate, the most merciful. So some of the epithets of God are considered feminine epithets. But again, the idea was that, of course, theologically they say that God is neither male nor female, but the language used is male. And that was because, again, if you have the idea of the motherhood of God, then you can't separate this or this from God. So today I want to talk, well, let me say one more thing about that, and then I'll come to the Holy Mother. That, and again, this is mainly for those who have a Western upbringing or have been influenced by Western religious ideas. Modern religious ideas. Nowadays, there is a reaction, even among many Roman Catholics, against Mary, because they say that Mary was conceived of by the Church as this pure and holy virgin who was perfectly pure and perfectly loving and perfectly all-suffering, and that was used as almost, she was, you could say, it's an exaggeration, but you could almost say she was weaponized to keep women in their place. Well, it may be that there was an element to that, but that's not the ideal of Mary. We feel that way because we misunderstand the very purpose of an ideal. Again, an ideal is that which gives us something to strive for, something to aim towards. And as in calculus, you approach a limit, but you never quite get to the limit. You get closer and closer to the limit. And so an ideal is something that allows us to get closer and closer to something which makes us blessed. And so the ideal of the Virgin Mary was this ideal of purity, this ideal of love, this idea of the strength of suffering, not the weakness of suffering, not making oneself an object of abuse and not minding and saying, okay, you can abuse me because I'm just a worm or whatever. No, nothing like that. The strength of endurance. Without that, whether we are men or women, we can't progress spiritually unless we develop the power of endurance. Sahanam sarvadukhanam, apratikara purvakam. Shankaracharya says in the Viveka Chudamani that the endurance of everything, without trying to fix it, without trying to remedy it, the ability to suffer everything, without even chintavilaparahitam, without even the thought that I am suffering. Sa titiksha nigadyate. That is what is called titiksha, endurance. And so that ideal of endurance, again, that's not inviting abuse. That's not accepting abuse. That means let me have the power to endure whatever I have to endure in life. And so in motherhood, you find that done from the standpoint of love for the child. And so the Divine Mother also represents that. So the modern reaction against the Virgin Mary, yes, there may be sociological problems with the way that the ideal was presented. There probably were problems with the way the ideal was presented, just as there are reactions against the Church in its praise of poverty and praise of the poor. Yes, sometimes that was used to justify allowing people to be kept poor. and to resist the need for social change and more egalitarian social policy. Yes, that may be true. But aside from the politics and sociology of errors made in the presentation, the ideal still lives as a beautiful ideal. So, coming to Holy Mother, she is a modern incarnation of the ideal, of course, the ideal of motherhood. In fact, Ramakrishna said he had left Holy Mother behind because he died many years before she passed away. 20, 30, 34 years before Holy Mother passed away, Sri Ramakrishna passed away. So she remained 34 years after Sri Ramakrishna passed away. So he said, I'm leaving her behind, I'm leaving you behind, to Holy Mother, to exemplify the motherhood of God, to show what the motherhood of God is. So she was born on December 22nd, 1853, and she passed away on July 20th, 1920, at the age of 66. So she lived much longer than Sri Ramakrishna, much longer than much longer than Swami Vivekananda. So the Holy Mother had many aspects to her. I'm not going to go into her life and tell the story of her life because there are many beautiful books which do that. And those of you who are watching this who are already devotees, who are already followers of Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, hopefully there are others who will find benefit in the talk also. But those of you who are devotees, of course, you know her life. And though it's always good to be reminded of it, that you can do in your sacred reading, your lectio, as the Christians call the practice of meditative reading, sacred reading. So again, there are various aspects of Holy Mother, and I want to talk about some of the aspects of her life today. So one is Mother simply as Mother. She used to tell many of her devotees, recorded in her various conversations, always remember that you have a mother. Always remember that you have a mother. And I knew many disciples of Holy Mother when I first came into the order in 1969 and up through the 1980s, into the 90s, but in the 70s and into the 80s, there were many of Holy Mother's disciples still alive. And so I met many of them, and a number of them who were very close to Mother, the ones who were sevaks, attendants to the Holy Mother. Like Gopesh Maharaj, whom I mentioned, Rammoy Maharaj, Baroda Maharaj, Ishananandaji, Parameshwaranandaji, and others. And then many disciples who weren't sevaks, but who were her disciples. And one of the things that I saw in them was the complete absence of fear. The complete absence of fear. I never saw any of them who had any sense of fear of anything. There was such a naturalness about them. And why was that naturalness? Because in coming to Mother, having seen her, having received initiation from her, having received her touch when she blessed them after initiation, then they were blessed with that fearlessness for the rest of their life, because they knew, I always have a mother. So just as the little child knows that as long as I have a mother, she'll protect me from everything, these men, even in their old age, and I say men because it was men that I knew in the monastery. I didn't know, I met one of her women disciples, but only one, and I just met her. These men, even as old men, they still had that childlike knowledge and dependence on the mother, because I have a mother. I have a mother who in all situations is there, ready to take care of me. And so Holy Mother would often say, just think of me simply as Mother. Don't have to think of me as the Divine Mother, think of me as Kali, think of me as an incarnation. No, just think of me as Mother. And she would say sometimes that I am your real mother, not your mother in the sense of your guru's wife, not your mother in the sense of imaginary mother, not the mother in the sense that kids call their neighbor mother just because they're close to her. but I am your real mother. And so that fact of her being simply mother, that one word is the closest one-word description of who the Holy Mother was. Within that one word, mother, is everything. The whole universe of Holy Mother's life, her thought, her teachings, her actions, her spiritual power, her cosmic being and her cosmic activity, all of that is contained in the word mother. And so that has tremendous value. For one thing, if we just know that she is my mother, then that gives me confidence in all situations. Yes, these swamis that I knew, many of them had to pass through great difficulties, great trials and things. So it wasn't that having Holy Mother meant that they could just bask in her love and not do anything. No, they had to go through great difficulties, face great difficulties, but they always knew that Mother is there. Somehow things will work out. Somehow things will work out. I don't have to worry about it because Mother has taken my burden. And so they would face all difficulties and come out the other side with that same childlike confidence. I've mentioned before in other talks, usually once a year when Mother's Day comes around or Holy Mother's birthday comes around, that Ram Moya Maharaj, whom I knew, Swami Gaurishwaranandaji, he came to Holy Mother as a boy. He was in his teens when he came to Mother. I think he was actually 16 years old, but he looked much younger. And so Mother was very free around him and allowed him to be very free around her because of his apparent youth and his childlikeness. And so when I knew him, he was an old man. I saw him a number of times. And at first, the first time I met him, I wasn't very impressed because I thought he wasn't like many of the other great swamis that I had known, about whom there was a deep dignity and a deep silence and there was a sense of something special about them. When I saw Ram Moy Maharaj, he was just so free, he was carefree, he was laughing, and the thing that I noticed was he was extremely simple like a child. But I didn't feel that special thing that I felt around the other great holy men that I had felt, the Gambhir, the deep gravitas that I felt around them. But after a little while, after a short time, I realized that no, that is Ram Moy Maharaj's greatness, and that is the depth of his spirituality. He's so simple that no grown person could be that simple without being spiritually great. That type of simplicity, saralata, that type of simplicity is not possible for an ordinary person. He had no cares in the world, completely childlike. So that was a wonderful thing to have seen. So the many people I've known, I'm talking about people of my generation or near my generation, not people who met Holy Mother. People who, after years of devotion to the Holy Mother, they began to think that their own mother looked like Holy Mother. So whether they actually looked like Holy Mother or not, that's doubtful. But in the eyes of a devotee, gradually their own mother began to resemble the Holy Mother, even in physical appearance. And that itself is a wonderful thing. There's stories in Holy Mother's life where people tell that when they saw Holy Mother, they thought that they were seeing their own mother. Again, if you put a picture of Holy Mother and a picture of this devotee's mother side by side, you say, well, they don't look anything alike. But to the person, because we all see something in our own mother and in our own father that other people don't see. And other people see things in our mother and father that we don't see. It was always a surprise to me when I was a kid, and especially when I got into my teens and so forth, to hear other people talk about my parents, because that wasn't the parents that I knew, because I knew them from a standpoint of a child. And so I saw them in a special way. And so when we look at our mother or look at our father, even their face speaks to us differently from the way it speaks to a camera or to another person who's looking as a camera, like a camera, just seeing the physical form. We see something else that's there, the whole history of our relationship, the history of our loving relationship with our parent is there in what we're seeing. And so we read much deeper into the face than the camera does or other people do or an artist could. And so, again, mother as just the simple mother, that itself is a wonderful thing. And that's all that we need. I'm going to go on with other aspects, but that's all that we really need. I should mention also that to some people, Holy Mother was and now is a daughter. The Holy Mother was a daughter to them. There were devotees who saw Holy Mother as a little girl. And I was just reading this morning in, was it Josephine MacLeod or Betty Leggett? They're one or the other. They're reminiscences. I have the two. I was reading both this morning, and I have the two mixed together in my mind. One or the other of them was saying how the Holy Mother laughed like a little girl. That when they were talking, and Sita mentions that sometimes too in her letters, that Holy Mother would laugh like a little girl. And so many people saw her as a little girl. So they took that Vatsalya Bhava, the Vaishnava's Vatsalya Bhava, the attitude of I'm the mother and God is my child, that attitude towards the Holy Mother. And so the various stories in the oral tradition and a little bit written, not so much written about it, unfortunately, but in the oral tradition about Holy Mother, the childlike nature of the Holy Mother. So then we come from the simple mother just as mother. And again, that's enough. But there are other aspects of the Holy Mother also. And one, of course, is Holy Mother as the Divine Mother. First of all, Holy Mother as an incarnation of the Divine Mother. And Sri Ramakrishna himself was the first to point out to others that the Holy Mother was the Divine Mother herself, born in human form, that she wasn't an ordinary jiva. We are born into this world because of past karma. Nobody asks us, would you like to take birth? And certainly nobody asks us, would you like to take birth for the good of the world? No, just we suddenly find we're born. How it happened, we don't know. We just suddenly, when we get old enough to think a little bit and look around, we say, my God, where am I? What happened? But for one like the Holy Mother, she was born from a state of perfection for a spiritual purpose. So Holy Mother as an incarnation of the Divine Mother, which means she was the Divine Mother. Now, I know that sounds somewhat dogmatic, so if there are people who watch this who don't accept her as the Divine Mother, that's fine. I'm not pressing anything on anyone. But there are many who accept her already as such, and to them I'm speaking right now. Once the Holy Mother herself had a vision. When she came back, she was in a deeply, after Sri Ramakrishna, long after he'd passed away, she came back from a deep state and said that she had been to a place where she was seated on a splendid throne and was being attended by others. That is, she didn't explain it this way, but it was obvious from the way she described it that she, in the vision, she had seen herself in her full divine estate as the Divine Mother. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that she was Sarada, Saraswati. Now, Sarada, the name, is an interesting name because in Bengali it's spelled with a dental S, Sarada. Not in the Sanskrit, there are three, and Sanskritic languages also, there are three S's. So the origin of Sarada is actually Sharada, with the Talavya Sha, the S with an accent mark over it in transliterated Sanskrit, which, for people watching, I should do it that way, which is the first S in the Sanskrit alphabet, which is somewhat of an SH sound. And it comes from Sharat, which means autumn, and Sharada is the Divine Mother who's worshipped in the autumn. But in Bengali, Bengali, it began to be spelled as Sarada with a dental S, just a plain S without any H to it, Sarada. And there it means, Sarada means Saram Dadati. She who, Saram Dadati, she who gives the essence. The essence means Brahmajnana, the knowledge of the infinite. So she is the giver of the essence. And so as such, she's also Saraswati. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, she is Sarada, she is Saraswati, the incarnation of the goddess of wisdom and the goddess of the arts. So now you may wonder, well, Holy Mother, first of all, she didn't know any musical instrument. It's said that she had an extraordinarily beautiful voice. As Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda had, she also had an extraordinarily beautiful voice. But no one ever heard her singing. She would never sing out loud. They were just the women devotees, once in a while, would hear her singing in a very soft voice. That was because of her modesty. She wouldn't sing for other people. She wouldn't sing so people outside of the inner apartments could hear her. But those who heard her singing very softly said that she had an enchanting, extraordinarily beautiful voice. But again, as Saraswati, she didn't play the veena or other musical instruments. She didn't do painting and image making and things like that. Saraswati being the patron deity of all of the arts. And to call her the goddess of wisdom is strange also. She used to say that she would praise a certain brahmachari because he knew how to wind up the clock. So she herself was extremely simple. When she first went to Calcutta and opened a tap, she had never seen a tap before, and somebody told her to turn the tap in order to get water from the tap. And in those days, because of the more primitive plumbing system, first there'd be a hissing of air coming out of the trapped air coming out of the pipe as the water under pressure came through. And so she heard the hissing and ran away because she thought that there was a snake in the pipe. And so she's the goddess of wisdom. Doesn't know how to wind up a clock, is afraid of water coming out of a tap the first time she sees it, and she was practically unlettered. And yet in that verse I chanted at the beginning, she said, Sarva Vidya Swarupam Tam, the embodiment of all wisdom, of all knowledge, Vidya. And that means of all vidyas, of all knowledges, the embodiment of all knowledges and all wisdoms, as well as the highest wisdom. So Sri Ramakrishna said that yes, she was Saraswati. And if you study your life, you begin to see what that means, that she was the embodiment of the highest wisdom. Sister Nivedita said that she never saw the Holy Mother fail to give expression to understanding of even the most subtle ideas that were presented to her, ideas that she had never learned in school or anything, but anytime anything was told to her, she would have the most extraordinary understanding of everything and give a judgment on things that showed clear and deep understanding. And so she was the embodiment of wisdom. No, she couldn't have taught classes in biology. She couldn't have taught classes in nuclear physics. She couldn't teach languages to people. She couldn't even teach reading and writing in Bengali. Though as a young woman in Dakshineshwar, she used to, first in Kamarpukur and then in Dakshineshwar, she used to try to learn reading and writing. And she learned enough so she could read a little bit and write a little bit. But by later age, for lack of practice, she could no longer even sign her own name. So she was functionally illiterate. And yet she was Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, the embodiment of the highest wisdom. And when you approach her, you find that, yes, she was that. Sri Ramakrishna also said that she was Lakshmi, and so she likes to wear ornaments. And so Sri Ramakrishna had ornaments made for her, and said that she was Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity. And unlike Sri Ramakrishna, who couldn't touch money, he couldn't touch gold, he couldn't touch money, coins or bills or anything that represented money. He couldn't touch it. But Holy Mother, when devotees would give money, she would take it and salute it to her head as a representative of Lakshmi. She herself was completely non-attached to wealth. She would have the brahmacharyans or sevaks or sevikas keep the money in a box without a lock, and let people take money and put money as they wanted to. So she had no attachment, like Ramakrishna, she had no attachment to money, and yet she always saluted it as an embodiment of Lakshmi, the goddess of wisdom. And she was also Durga. Once she was working in Jairambati, sweeping and doing other household chores, and she said, in the presence of a brahmachari, said, "I can't finish all of my tasks in spite of having so many arms." And then she stopped and put her hands on her knees and bent over and looked at the brahmachari and laughed and said, "See what fun. I say I can't finish my tasks even though I have so many arms." So she was Durga herself. And of course she was Kali. Sri Ramakrishna also is said to be, even by Vivekananda, an incarnation of Kali. Once Shibu, her nephew, young nephew, was walking with her towards Jairambati, and it was getting late into the night. And Holy Mother was trying to hurry to get home. And Shibu stopped her and said, "Tell me who you are." And she said, "What do you mean, tell you who I am? I'm your aunt, Sarada. What else am I?" I said, No, people say that you are Kali. And so Holy Mother kept trying to evade the question. And so then she said, "Well, people say that I am Kali." And he said, "No, I want you to say." And so then finally Holy Mother told him that yes. And I knew a Swami. I'm not going to stop and try to think of it. Satswarupananda. Satya Swarupanand, Satswarupanand, yes, Satswarupanandji. He was a disciple of Holy Mother. I knew him when he was very old, retired in Benares, Kashi. And one day I was standing beside him, just the two of us were alone. I'd been asked to stay with him for a little bit while his attending Swami was doing something else. And so to make conversation, I asked him, "Maharaj, how many times did you see Holy Mother?" He said, "I only saw her twice, once before initiation and then for an interview, and then again at the time of initiation. But," he said, "when I went in for initiation, I saw Kali." So I asked him, "Do you mean that you didn't see Holy Mother seated on the seat giving you initiation? You saw Kali?" I said, "Yes. In place of the Holy Mother, I saw Kali. And thus the purpose of my life was fulfilled." Meaning that she gave him the vision of Kali, the spiritual vision of Kali, and fulfilled the purpose of his life. And so she was Saraswati, she was Lakshmi, she was Durga, she was Kali. She was also Sita, the beloved of Rama. When she went to Rameshwaram, to the temple, and saw the Shiva Lingam, she said in a soft voice, but her attendants close by heard her say it. She said, "It's just as I left it." And the tradition is that Sita had established the Shiva Lingam in Rameshwaram. And she said, "It's just as I left it." And then people asked her, "Mother, what did you say?" And she came to herself. Again, she said it in sort of an ecstatic state. And then she came to herself and said, "Oh, nothing, nothing, nothing." She wouldn't admit to it. And then she also is the perfect embodiment of Radha. So she was Sita, the beloved of Ram, and she was Radha, the beloved of Sri Krishna. After Sri Ramakrishna passed away, she went on pilgrimage to Vrindavan. There she spent her time in ecstasy, just in this intense, loving relationship towards Sri Ramakrishna, who was her Krishna. And so she was the embodiment of Radha's love for Krishna, her love for Sri Ramakrishna. She was the embodiment of Sita, the embodiment of Dharma that Sita was. It's said that Dharma. No, I'm sorry, I can't remember the verse now. Anyway, but it says that one who observes Dharma is protected by Dharma, and so Sita was the embodiment of the ideal of Dharma. That again, which the English word righteousness doesn't represent at all. It means that the perfection of human character, the spiritual perfection of human character in all of one's relationships to everything. And so Sita was the embodiment of that. And Holy Mother certainly was the representative of that as well. The embodiment of Dharma itself, the most comprehensive idea of Dharma, where she was the embodiment of the perfection of living in relationship to everything in the world, where her relationships to everything, including material creation, was perfected. You remember the story when she was in Jairambati, there was a woman, a 60-year-old woman who had come and wanted to do some service for her. And so she picked up a broom and began to sweep the courtyard. And when she was finished sweeping, she tossed the broom in the corner. And Holy Mother said, "No, no, no, my dear, never do that. The broom gives so much service to us. You must treat it with respect. You please go and salute the broom and put it properly in its place." And so the woman said, "I'm 60 years old, and yet I never heard of saluting a broom." But Holy Mother had the embodiment of the perfection of relationship with everything, with people and even with things. And as Radha, the perfection of ecstatic love for God was Holy Mother as well. And then she was also the embodiment of the Mary ideal, the ideal of Mary in the Christian world. About Mary, we know almost nothing because the Bible only mentions her 2 or 3 times. And one of those times is not even very complimentary, where Jesus sort of says, I don't know you, or rejects her in a way. And so there's almost nothing known about her life. The birth of Jesus, and then finding him in the temple when he was 12 years old, teaching the Pandits, and then at the cross, and then in between a couple of times during the adult life of Jesus, during his mission where she's mentioned, but very briefly. So we know very little. But in Holy Mother, we see the embodiment of that ideal in a long life, the embodiment of the ideal which Mary represents in the life of the Holy Mother. And let me say a word about that, that Sri Ramakrishna had the vision of Christ. He had the vision of Allah, and through that into the Nirguna Brahman. And Swamiji had the vision of Buddha. And it's my belief that Sri Ramakrishna that merged the ideal of Jesus, merged the ideal of Islam, merged the ideal of the various traditions in India into himself. That just as Durga was made of the power of all of the gods got together and gave their power to form Durga, who is the sum total of the power of all of the gods. So Sri Ramakrishna's Sarva Deva Devi Swarupa, the embodiment of the all gods and goddesses, that is, of all spiritual ideals. And so my own belief is that he absorbed into himself, when Jesus merged into him, when he merged into Allah, when he had the experience of Krishna and Rama and so many deities, that they were merging into his being, so that he remains as the representative, harmoniously combining all of these. And so Holy Mother also, she embodies the Mary ideal. And she also is through Holy Mother that the certain Buddhist ideals also were embodied in the order, through her and Swami Vivekananda in particular. Sri Ramakrishna, of course, to some extent, but he never practiced Buddhism, never studied it. But Swamiji studied it and taught about it and said many things about Buddhism. And he himself in his own life was very similar to the life of Buddha. And Holy Mother also, she first saw the Buddhist monks in Bodh Gaya and prayed to Sri Ramakrishna when she saw the monks living in community, that may our children, the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, also have a community. May they have a place where they can live together, where they can eat together, where they will be provided food. There are enough monks of the old type who wander from place to place, not knowing where they will sleep or what they will eat. Let your children have a place to stay and food to eat. And so that was inspired by seeing Buddhist monks. And then she also embodies the compassion of the Buddha, and also the ideal of Kuan Yin. The Chinese deity Kuan Yin, or the Buddhist Chinese Buddhist bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara, a male bodhisattva in Indian Buddhism, became a female bodhisattva, Kuan Yin, in China, Japan, Korea. And so Holy Mother embodies that ideal also, the ideal of perfect compassion. So now it's time to close. So I'll just summarize the rest of what I wanted to say. So Holy Mother represents, like Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother also represents the ideal of all different spiritual paths. She was the master of Karma Yoga, of Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Raja Yoga, all of the Bhakti Yoga, all of the yogas. She's the Divine Mother. She's also the Cosmic Mother. By the difference, I mean, there's not really a difference, but a difference in emphasis. That the Divine Mother, we're thinking of the Mother who is divine. But the Cosmic Mother means she's the mother of all of this. She's the mother of everything here. This all is her own being. This all is the mother's own being. So she's the cosmic mother as well. She's the holder of the key to liberation. So by praying to her, she opens the door to liberation. Even those who want Jnana Yoga, they're not looking for a relationship, not looking to think of God in a relationship or whatever. Even there, Holy Mother is the holder of the key to liberation. And so she's the mother of all beings, the mother of the universe, and the mother of Brahmajnana as well. Mother as the self. Mother is the Atman. Mother is the self itself. That mother was the embodiment of non-dualistic knowledge. Her way of expressing the non-dual knowledge which she had was as mother of all. In the Ashtavakra Samhita, there's the verse, Mai ananta maham bodhav ascharyam jiva vichayaha udyanti gnanti khelanti pravishanti swabhavataha. That in me, the infinite ocean of pure consciousness, the waves of individual selves, they arise, they fight with each other, they play for some time, and then they merge back into the ocean as pure consciousness. In me, the ocean of pure consciousness. So Holy Mother saw herself as the ocean of pure consciousness in which this whole universe arose. So you may say that's because she was the Divine Mother. Yes, because she was the Divine Mother. But in Hinduism, God and individual soul are not separate. They're not two different things. And so she represents the Divine Mother, but she also represents the embodiment of Brahmajnana, which is possible for all of us. So she is the self, the Paramatman, the self of each one of us. She is the embodiment of Advaita. And she is simply everything. She is everything. As we grow in spiritual life, a time comes for some, not for all, because some are more oriented towards a particular relationship and worshiping and playing with God. But for some, the impulse towards oneness becomes overriding. That you just want one thing, one reality, one rasam. Whether that's the mantra becomes everything. The whole universe is dissolved into the mantra. Or the Holy Mother, the whole universe, including self, dissolves into the Mother. The difference between subject and object. At first, Mother is the divine object, and I'm the subject seeking the Divine Mother. But a time comes when the Mother dissolves subject and object into herself, and only Mother remains, but not as an object, as reality itself. And so I'll conclude by saying that Holy Mother is everything. She's simply Mother, that's all we need. She's the Divine Mother, she's the Cosmic Mother, she's the embodiment of liberation, she's the embodiment of the key holder to the door of liberation. She is the self itself, and she is everything. So the last thing is her last words, her last instruction. I tell you one thing, my child. If you want peace of mind, do not find fault with others. Rather, see your own faults. Learn to make the whole world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. The whole world is your own. So with that, I'll give a closing chant. No, first announcements and then a closing chant. But first, again, greetings to all mothers. In fact, mothers in those who are mothers at heart, and to the motherhood existing in the hearts of all, both male and female. Now for announcements, we will continue with classes and lectures as usual. On Tuesday night at 7:30, the Gita class. Thursday morning at 11, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class. And next week we will have a lecture. And there's one special announcement I want to make, and that is that Sewa International, they spell it S-E-W-A, not Seva with a V, but Sewa is the same word. It's just in some parts of India, it's pronounced more V-like, in some parts of India W, and so this organization has taken the W spelling. Sewa International, it's a wonderful organization which has branches around the country, but we have a very big branch here in Houston. And they're doing wonderful service to our community here in Houston during the pandemic. They're providing food and other services to people. They've provided PPP, personal protection, PPE, yeah, personal protection equipment to police, to health workers, and so forth. They're doing a number of wonderful things. So we have been helping in a small way. We want to ask people who are interested to help also. Every week they are giving food packets to people who need them, and so we're collecting. You can bring food packets here. There's certain things that they've requested, and so we want to stick with those things because those things we know that they can use. I'll read out a list now, but we're sending out a mailing to you also, which you'll get soon, with the same list in it. So you don't have to memorize this or write it down hurriedly as I'm saying it, but I'll just read it briefly. And you can bring the supplies here and we will deliver to Sewa International. Or if you prefer, they also accept monetary donations, which go for the same purpose. And the money, it's not like many charities where 10% of what you give goes to the recipient and 90% is eaten up in administration. No, here what you give goes to service. And so whether you give money or whether you give food stuff, both will be equally useful, whichever is easier for you. So again, we'll send out a emailing, which will tell you the details. But it says, we are hosting drives for the next 6 weeks in association with several organizational partners who are in this group, and more are joining. And we have been trying to support in a small way, but we wish to help as much as we can. The location of the food distribution will change every week. Best to collect the material and ping me, the man who wrote this, and I can advise about the drop-off location. So if you bring the foodstuffs here, we will keep it stored and we will deliver it to the drop-off point. And what they want are things like rice, pasta, sugar, oil, cookie or biscuits, garbanzo beans, pasta sauce, tortillas, potatoes, bread, cereal boxes, oatmeal, pancake mix, fruits. So again, that also we will put in the list. So they're doing wonderful work, and we want to be of help to them. So anyone who wants to be of service in this way to the Houston community, please join with us. So I'll give a closing chant. Om madhuvatartayate madhuksharanti sindhavaha madhvirnasantoshadhihi madhunaktamutoshasi madhumatparthivagum rajaha madhudyarastu nafpita madhumando vanaspatir madhumagomastu suryaha madhvirgavo bhavantu naha. Om madhu Om Madhu, Om Madhu. For us who seek the truth, and for all living beings, may the winds blow sweetly, may the rivers flow sweetly, may the herbs yield us sweetness. Sweet be the night and the break of day, sweet be the very dust of the earth. May the heavens pour down sweetness upon us. May the trees, lords of the forest, bear us sweetness. May the sun shed its sweetness upon us. May all the directions pour forth sweetness. Om, sweetness, sweetness, sweetness.